Goblin Maidens presents Goblin Rogue, Misadventures of a Female Goblin. The tavern door opened with a squeak that was immediately lost among the noises of the busy morning. The smell of food being prepared, alcohol and smoking pipes mixed in the air, creating a curious though appetizing aroma. With heavy steps he approached the counter, followed by the stares of the few patrons dining early at this hour. It might have been simple curiosity, his young appearance, or perhaps his shining new armor. However you looked at him, he was out of place. He ignored them and took a seat on a stool that was definitely older than him. A middle-aged woman with blonde curly hair tied in a high ponytail and dressed in a black barmaid outfit at the other side of the counter smiled and nodded at him as he sat.
"Good morning, love. What can I get you?"
she asked, beaming brightly at the newcomer, her breasts bouncing lightly as she moved.
"Water and a bowl of porridge,"
he answered, trying not to stare at her cleavage.
"Sure thing."
As if the barmaid taking his order was the signal everybody was waiting for, the noise and chatter from the tables resumed. She quickly took a pitcher from the shelf behind her and poured the fresh liquid into a wooden mug.
"Fancy armor you carry. You an adventurer?"
"Yes, ma'am. Just arrived in town from the capital,"
he answered promptly and a little louder than he intended.
"The imperial capital? What brings a fancy young lad like you all the way to Vinesburg?"
"A friend from the guild told me there's an unexplored dungeon here. The name's Mica, by the way,"
the adventurer added as if he could read the barmaid's mind.
"Oh, darling, I'm sorry to tell you, but those are old rumors."
The barmaid answered with pity all over her face.
"Meaning?"
Mica asked for clarity.
"There's a dungeon, all right, but it has been raided through and true. Years ago, in fact."
The young man's spirits abandoned him in an instant at the revelation. The noise from the tables turned into a whisper as his father's words resounded in his mind.
"You're wasting your time and my money, boy. Just stay here and get a position as a city guard."
The fight he had with his father the night before his departure was awful, and he was hoping to turn things around by coming back loaded with loot.
"Jace, you son of a—"
He started cursing at his friend when something bumped his left thigh.
"Pullman!"
A voice, or rather a squeal, called to him, but when he followed the sound with his eyes, all he saw was a bowl of porridge on a small tray.
"You ordered this?"
Floating in the air, the voice continued with a heavy accent and odd pronunciation. At the same time, a pair of skinny arms lowered the tray, revealing a green-skinned kid, a goblin. Instinctively, Mica reached for his sword and tried to draw it as quickly as he could.
"Whoa."
The barmaid moved quicker than his hand before he could draw his sword and slammed a hand on the counter to call his attention.
"Easy there, love. No need for that."
"What are you talking about? It's a goblin!"
Mica's voice grew louder with each word, drawing everyone's attention to him, but he was too busy looking back and forth between the barmaid and the creature to notice. Slowly, the woman reached his hand, still clenching the hilt of his sword, and placed her hand over his.
"Just calm down, lad. She ain't gonna hurt you."
"She?"
Coming to his senses, Mica looked more attentively at the goblin, just noticing it for the first time, the long strands of shaggy black hair covering the creature's head, and the pair of amply breasts poking out of the cleavage of her blouse. The green skin and pointy ears were definitely those of a goblin, but the rest of the creature's features were female.
"This your first time out of the capital, ain't it? No wonder you have never seen a female goblin before."
"A female? Goblin?"
The young adventurer finally let go of his sword and took a look at the goblin. She was about 3 feet tall and dressed in a miniature dress that resembled the one the barmaid was wearing. He could have mistaken her for a little girl if it weren't for those exuberant breasts and wide hips.
"'Tis.
The barmaid said, looking at the goblin.
What have I told about courtesy?"
"Disc!"
Tiz clicked her tongue and forced a smile that bared her pointy teeth.
"Seer Human, is this your order?"
The words sounded practiced, but still very accented.
Yeah, yes.
Mica answered and accepted the tray from her. He prepared to take a spoonful of the porridge when more squeal-like voices came to his ears. He turned around and noticed them all over the tavern, taking orders, cleaning tables, chatting, and even drinking with some of the patrons, at least a dozen goblin girls with the same outfit,
Unbelievable. They're workers.
said Mica with astonishment.
Waitresses, to be precise.
Corrected the barmaid.
How do you like the green bosom boy?
I beg your pardon? I was not.
The young man snapped at being caught staring.
The name of this place, lad. Nothing to be ashamed of. Many come here to get a look-see at my girls.
The barmaid winked at him with a smile.
Pullman!
Tiz called, showing her open palms to him and a face that begged for attention.
Oh, sorry.
The young man apologized and promptly passed her back the tray. Tiz frowned and turned to leave, stomping.
Stingy human!
Taken aback, Mica looked at her, wondering if he made her angry.
Don't think too hard about it, lad.
The barmaid interrupted his thoughts.
There are two things goblin females love more than anything. Gold and human males.
You don't mean
Mica swallowed hard,
they
gesturing towards the goblins,
with them?
pointed then at the tables, eyes wide open.
Of course, they fuck with them. What's a brothel for if not?
A bro. A brothel?
He almost yelled as he got up from his seat with a jump.
You still wet behind the ears, ain't you, boy?
The barmaid teased.
No.
Mica said with fervent indignation, but could feel his face warming with color.
It's just that. Goblins?
I know, not everyone's cup of tea, but sooner or later you take a liking to it once you try it.
The barmaid shrugged.
What say you, boy? Care for a taste?
The barmaid leaned toward him with a grin.
I can get you a good discount.
She added, winking at him. It took Mica all of his willpower to keep his jaw from dropping to the floor and nodding no instead. With that, he paid for his meal, thanked the barmaid, and headed to the exit as straight as an arrow. He walked briskly until he made a turn at a corner, running into an alley where he finally stopped and let go of his breath with a heavy sigh.
Man. I'm gonna punch Jace in the nose once I get back home.
He fetched his money bag from underneath his armor and counted his coins, 6, 10, 15, 20. Just enough to board a ship back home, but he would have to make it back to the port city of North Cove by foot. It would be half a day of travel, and he would arrive by night anyways. The young man leaned his back against a wall and let his feet drift on the ground until he landed on his butt. It hurt, but not as much as his ego and pride.
What am I gonna do?
He asked himself out loud.
This was a total waste of time and money. If I rent a room to spend the night, I won't have enough to buy a ticket to the capital. Much less to get a taste at the brothel,
he thought, laughing at himself. And without any effort, his mind went back to that busty goblin. With his eyes closed, he tried to imagine how it would feel to touch her. How heavy would she be? What kind of face would she make if he did this and that?
You are a sick, horny loser, Mica Hillside,
he muttered to himself.
Horny human?
A high-pitched voice said, pulling him out of his fantasies.
Who?
He asked as he scrambled back to his feet. He looked around but found no one.
Horny human wants, yes?
Asked the voice, making Mica look down.
Horny human wants it, yes?
A female goblin, another one. But this one was quite different. Instead of a barmaid outfit, she was wearing a simple red bikini armor that left most of her olive-green skin exposed, aside from her hands and feet, covered in leather gloves and boots that seemed too big for her. A cheap-looking dagger hung strapped to her right tight. Her eyes were bright green, so deep that they stood out against her yellowish-green skin. Her face was nothing like the other goblin girls at the brothel. A grin flashed from her crimson lips, and her eyebrows arched inquisitively while looking at him. But the feature that caught his attention the most was her ash-blonde hair that flowed over her shoulders, reaching just above her perfectly round breasts. She was strangely beautiful. The story continues on Twitter. Follow us for more. Goblin Maidens content. Thank you for listening.